Thanks, Stephanie, and welcome everyone. I will stay after the end of our conversation, after we have stopped the recording, if for any questions that you may have. But for now, we want to keep our conversation to about an hour. So I'm going to jump right in with our topic. We arrive in the world filled with love, but our lives do not turn out as expected. And it's not just the issue of unconditional love, which few of us receive. Our experience of love comes with narratives and obligations to serve familial and cultural imperatives, which we as childless people are unable to do. Does that make us less lovable or desirable? Is there a pathway to love beyond the harsh love of our patriarchal and hierarchical world? Polish psychologist turned poet and novelist Olga Tokarczuk explores this very issue. She thinks we need more than empathy. We need something achingly missing from our harsh culture, which she calls tenderness, and which she describes as the most modest form of love. She said in her Nobel Prize winning speech, tenderness is the art of personifying, of sharing feelings, and thus endlessly discovering similarities. Creating stories means constantly bringing things to life, giving an existence to all the tiny pieces of the world that are represented by human experiences, the situations people have endured, and their memories. Tenderness personalizes everything to which it relates, making it possible to give it a voice and to give it the space and the time to come into existence and to be expressed. Being childless not by choice ejects us from traditional narratives about love and family, and the grieving process invites new approaches to relationships. Does it invite a new kind of love and even greater tenderness towards ourselves and others? Today, we're going to find out. We will be discussing love before and after childlessness with our 6 amazing and knowledgeable individuals who have navigated the childless experience, the grieving, and the shifts that come from that experience, finding their own language for love and their lives. They are, starting with the UK, Stephanie Phillips, the founder of the invaluable World Childless Week, which she created in 2017. In December 2020, Stephanie was shortlisted for the Most Inspirational Woman Award, and in September 2023, she was the winner of the BBC Hereford and Worcester Make a Difference Together Award. Stephanie lives in Worcestershire with her husband and 2 rescue cats, Storm and Teacup. Thank you, Steph, for making our conversation today possible. Yvonne John is the author of Dreaming of a Life Unlived, Intimate Stories and Portraits of Women Without Children. She has shared her journey of navigating the grief of involuntary childlessness on platforms such as BBC Radio 4's Woman's Hour and the BBC One documentary, Mylene, Miscarriage and Me. Yvonne is a trained facilitator of Gateway Women's Reignite Weekend Workshops, the Sacred Woman Retreat, an ambassador for World Childless Week, and creator of inclusive spaces for Black women and women of color to openly share their childless journeys as a leading voice on the intersection of infertility and race. Sarah Bradley from Gloucestershire in the UK describes her journey through childlessness as one of the toughest challenges she has faced. As a life coach, she supports childless women, men, and couples to find a way through the loneliness and isolation of childlessness to create a happy life without children. Sarah works with women who are single and childless to challenge stereotypes, build self-confidence, and encourage brave decision-making, and is now writing a book about moving forward from childlessness. Dr. Robin Hadley's main interests are the impact of male childlessness across the life course and raising the profile of the population of people aging without children and or family. He's a specialist associate lecturer at Manchester Metropolitan University, a research consultant, a founding member of the campaign group Aging Without Children, and an advisor to the childless advocacy group New Legacy Institute. His book, How is a Man Supposed to Be a Man? Male Childlessness, a Life Course Disrupted, has had excellent reviews, and he has provided evidence of the impact of excluding people aging without children or family from policy to a range of House of Lords and House of Commons committees. And from North America in the United States, Kate Kaufman from Portland, Oregon, is a writer, researcher who wrote, Do You Have Kids? Life When the Answer is No. She is fascinated by how those who don't have children craft their lives. Kate has been creative in crafting her own life outside of motherhood, from life in the corporate world to sheep farming to author. She has developed considerable knowledge from more than a decade of research and hundreds of interviews with childless women of all ages. And for those who don't know me, I'm Maria Hill. I came to Gateway Women, now Childless Collective, over 10 years ago, where I have enjoyed supporting other childless women and participating in Jody Day's fireside chats as part of her Gateway Elderhood project. It is also my pleasure to support World Childless Week as an ambassador. I'm a trained life coach, cultural frameworks coach, Reiki master, and theta healer with a focus on thriving through the immense cultural changes of our times. So welcome to all of you. Thanks for being here today. And so we're going to get started at the beginning with our first question. What was your early experience of love, and was becoming a parent a factor in your feelings of being lovable and valued by others? Who would like to jump in and get us started?
I will, if you like, Maria. I don't mind.
Okay.
Go. Yeah.
All right.
I consider myself incredibly lucky because I grew up with family love, which was the norm for me, and I took for granted that that's what everybody had. That sort of consistent, taken for granted, reliable family love. I had mum, dad, me, my sister, grandparents, cousins. We had a lovely family unit that I just thought that's how it is. And when you're young, to be able to have the safety of that consistent and unconditional love, you don't realize when you're young, do you, how valuable that is. As I've got older, and I so appreciate the love that I've had from family, and how lucky and fortunate I was to be born into that situation. And I guess it left me with the assumption that I would just carry on that pattern. I never thought that I wouldn't carry on and give my parents grandchildren, that my sister and my children will play together as cousins, just like we had and our cousins had. So whilst that unconditional family love was always there and still is a massive strength for me, it's also been a source of grief that I don't feel that I've had or delivered a similar part to it as I would have done. But I don't underestimate the value of it, and still do. It's still a big part of my life.
That's wonderful. Did you feel like it was expected that you would be a parent in order to feel lovable, or it sounds like you didn't have that kind of pressure?
I never ever felt any pressure. The only time I felt pressure was when I was wanting to have children and still going through the process of trying to have children. At that point, my sister hadn't had children, and I felt huge pressure to give my children to make my parents grandparents. They never put that pressure on me.
Oh,
and
cool.
I've never told them that, because I think they would be horrified that I ever thought that. But I certainly felt that, such that when my sister became pregnant with twins shortly after my marriage had ended, and it was the happiest and saddest moment of my life, because I was truly overjoyed for her and excited about becoming an auntie, but at the same, and very relieved that my parents were going to become grandparents. That was a huge pressure off, but also a huge sadness that it wasn't me. Yeah.
Makes sense. Anyone else?
I think my sort of childhood was very similar in a way, that I grew up like with family around me, like you say, my brother, my mum, aunts, uncles, cousins, and we grew up close, that we'd be, at each other's houses at the weekend. In the summer, we'd be in a 2-car convoy going to the beach, and get there while it's still chilly and things like that. And bank holidays were for picnics out on the moors, down by the river. So there were set things throughout the year that I really associated with being a child. And Boxing Day was always at my grand's doing parties, with like the normal table, the extra table, something else, all with odd chairs and the piano stool and the kitchen stool, all making it around. It was a big family association. So I had that comfort and that feeling of being part of something bigger. And I just automatically assumed that one day I'd be at the head of the table. Rather than being at the child end, I'd be at the head of the table, and I'd be the one organising the parties and the party food and bits and pieces like that. So like you, I grew up surrounded by that love. The only opposite is that I didn't really have a father figure. And the one guy who was my mum's partner, I remember as a child saying, "You don't love me, you hate me, I hate you." So I had that element. And I think perhaps that maybe strengthened the love that I did feel for the family and the association with that ongoing and that building as you age into the child, from a child to a parent to a gran. So that was an association I think I had to do with love when I first,
Mm.
I had from childhood.
Well, that's wonderful that you had that.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
that's lovely. Yeah. Anyone else?
I find the question a really interesting one because I think if I was to really reflect on it, I don't know if I could really say what love is. However, I do know I was loved.
Oh,
I because I think also part of what's wrapped up in that is throughout my life, I find there's an expectation from people because we are whatever family member, we should love each other, we should get on, we should do this and this and this. Whereas I always push, I am very rebellious, so I always push against narratives and I always challenge narratives because to me, why does that have to be true? Um, and I'm gonna love being around you because of you, not because I have to, because you are whoever you are as part of my family. And
mhm.
within that, I've seen what my dad has done to create our family unit because of his background and where he's coming from. That so I know I was loved because I know what he has done and what he has sacrificed and what he will always sacrifice for us as his family and for his children. So I know, so I suppose in a way I would think about what is love from the point of view that no matter what I do, my dad would never reject me. And then that's made it hard to then experience love outside of that because there is always a rejection of us as people. And that's actually fine because people will always say no and not want to be around. But I found it hard because I have a dad and a mum who would not push me away,
Oh,
no
that's lovely.
matter what. So that's how I know, for me, that's how I know I am loved and I'm held in that respect. I know my dad, I have many great memories of childhood memories of going out, going to the zoo, rowing on Dulwich Park, and my dad took loads of pictures, so I can always go back to his house and look at all these pictures and smile and see all the memories he has created and we've created over the years. And I know that's what I wanted to have with my children. And I know that's what I wanted my parents to have with my children.
Hmm.
So my sadness around the loss of motherhood really does stem from the fact that my parents will never have those memories of my children. They'll never be able to take them on holiday. They won't, I remember being in Dominica one year and there's loads of rivers and tourists for rivers. And he took us up the river and he was like, look, sit here and lift your legs up. And we just whooshed down the side, down the river. And there's many memories like this. And that's, as I said, that's where my sadness is that he never will get to do that with my children. And my children will never have those memories, lasting memories of him.
But then that's part of love, being able to make space for somebody. And you
Yeah,
talk, yeah, and that's how you knew that you were loved. That's wonderful. Yeah,
yeah.
lovely. Anyone else?
I can go.
All right.
It's interesting to go back and think about what it was like in the beginning because I had to go back and do like some mining to get back to what that felt like to be a little one. I was the first in my generation, so I got all kinds of attention. It turns out I had three sisters that were coming to follow and a rather dysfunctional mother and household with my parents. Um, but when I think about being a little girl, the earliest memories that I can come up with, I was this happy little girl, and I was very fortunate to have a relationship with my grandparents. My other sisters didn't get to have that, and and so I get great joy when I think about being a little girl. Um, the conditions when I grew up in the household were such that there were always things that were falling short of expectations. And that kind of set up a feeling of less than already, which perpetuated into adulthood and certainly related directly to childlessness. Um, but I don't remember anything that was expected of me in terms of having kids
Okay.
until my three younger sisters started to have kids. And then it was like it reconfirmed that I was kind of the black sheep in the family. It was kind of crafting my own world in a different way outside of some of the expectations. And that suited who I was, but it was also very, very lonely. And so to go back and remember the early times and then to come to where I am today, which we'll talk about later. But it feels really like I'm kind of coming home to my true nature.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, yeah,
I like that.
thanks.
That's nice.
And I'll go now.
Yeah, please.
So I come from a really large working class family, and I'm the seventh of eight
Oh, wow.
kids, so seventh youngest. And so there was a lot of bonding at different levels. My memory of my childhood is very frenetic, uh, really. And the expectation was that you would get married, get a job, get married, and have kids. And that's what I fully expected to do. And it's a sadness that I didn't do that. But yeah, I just think how much that bonding element when you're being raised meant it becomes an inner working model.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's bonding with different siblings at different times, I think, then I think I struggled to make relationships. And also, I was all in very, very quickly
Mm-hmm.
as well, because that was my experience of being there. So when we got when my when I had divorced from my first wife, that was totally devastating for me. Uh, and then there is a learning process in how to relate there and a growth from that. But yeah, I love and bonding, I think, go together in
Mm-hmm.
that childhood, and it's still there. And it's
That's good.
exact sort of acknowledging this is my behavior and I know where it's come from.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I can change it and sometimes I can't.
Cool. Great. That's lovely. Well, I come from a large family. I'm the oldest of five. When I was born, my mother came from Nazi Germany and my father was an American soldier, and they came here after the war. And so right after that, I mean, I was born very soon after that, and they brought my grandparents from Germany, my mother's mother and her stepfather over as well. I have a sister who's a year and a half younger, and then there's a 7 year different gap. I had two brothers who were born, and then I have a brother who's 16 years younger than I am. And my experience early on was a lot of conflict because my father was very much into the American mindset around freedom and the economy and all the kind of the capitalistic model. And my step grandfather was very much a German socialist. And there was a lot of fighting in the house because they lived with us. And so it was a very tense environment. And I can't say that I wasn't loved, but there was so much tension that it was hard for me to feel really a part of something or want to be a part of that. And so I developed a kind of I became a little bit like a loner within my own family. And being the oldest, I was put to work fairly early. I mean, by age 7, I was watching my brothers, and um, I was very much loved if I was taking care of others. That's when I felt it the most. But if I wasn't, you know, you can take care of us or you can take care of yourself, and you get some kind of a look. And so it was a really uncomfortable relationship between me and my parents. And I don't think I really have the patriarchal gene because it never really made sense for me, to me, all of this, you know, difficulty around women just being themselves. But anyway, it started me on the path of trying to understand more about the way the world works. And you know, there are certainly a lot of things that I gained from the experience. I had a good education, and I have some siblings who have tried to do better by their kids. And I think it has made me a bit of I think that my family wonders about me because I don't have children. I'm a bit of an anomaly and all of that. But so I can't say that I do have close relationships. But it does make me very mindful about the way we show up in the world and the way we interact. So, you know, there have been some good things that have come from that. So, as you went through the grieving process, what happened to those feelings of being lovable, desirable, valued? Did they change? And how did you process that shift? Anyone want to take on the next step?
I'll go for it.
Okay.
I think the love that you feel externally, it's almost like, for me, it was I didn't love myself because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So I was judging myself more than anybody else was. And because of that, you sort of harden a little bit, I think, because you're judging yourself. You think, you know, I can't be lovable if I've not become the person I expected other people to expect me to be, even though we don't necessarily know what they're thinking as such. So I think it was about, you know, more about me internally putting myself down and thinking that if I didn't love myself, I'm not saying thinking it, but just seeing myself as somebody perhaps who was unlovable because I was useless and couldn't do what I expected a woman to be able to do, what I expected myself to be able to do. So I probably pulled away from people perhaps because I felt like maybe I wasn't worthy of their friendship, attention, connection, whatever it was. It's an interesting thought, but yeah, I think it was very much internally what I felt is what I therefore possibly emitted to other people.
And did you get a lot of external feedback saying that, you know, the what's wrong with you look and that kind of thing?
I don't remember. I think my family have always been really supportive as such.
Oh,
But
that's
I
good.
am quite a closed book. Even though I talk out about childlessness, I am quite a closed book. So a lot of people, you know, even my husband will say, you know, just tell me what's going on in your head. And I think maybe from things going through my life and then childlessness, it all compacts to make me close down. And so who I give my love to maybe is more limited. If it's an extension of my friendships, so my friendships can be there, but there's always, I think, a little bit of a reservation, perhaps, to that, you know, deeper level.
I understand that. Yeah.
I really recognise what Steph's just been saying about that sort of withholding from people you know love you. So during my grieving process, there was the double whammy of the breakdown of my marriage and come to realizing then I was going to be childless as well, and sort of over several years working through that process. And I still had that very reliable family love, which I again was lucky never to have to doubt. I knew it was there, but because of everything that was happening to me and because of how I felt about myself and because of, I think, because of the front I was having to put on just to survive and not to completely collapse in a heap, I didn't share anything with the people that loved me the most. I think there was also part of me was trying to protect them. I didn't want them to know how hurt I was, how sad I was, what a bad place I was in. So part of my front was, I'm fine. I'm sad my marriage has ended. I don't think I ever mentioned childlessness to them. But it was all about presenting this strong front and I'm doing okay. So I wasn't being my authentic self. And as I actually properly began to grieve when I realized what childlessness was, when I found Gateway, when I found World Childless Week, and my proper grieving process started. It was again a while before I involved family, close friends. It was a very, very personal thing. So whilst I never felt unloved by the people, I was still sure of the love that I had in my consistent people. If anything, I pushed it away because it was just too much to share all the feelings I had internally with anybody else. I think it probably felt like I was about to explode or something. Yeah.
And your family was also a great source of nourishment for you.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I would be trying to protect that as well,
Yes. I mean, that sense of nurturing and it doesn't have to be family, does it? Just knowing that you have people who will love you whatever. Makes you feel incredibly safe. So when everything else around me, my marriage breaking down, my future that I'd expected wasn't there anymore, everything else felt unsafe. That safe love of my family and close friends was still there. I just rejected it in a sense, or I didn't tap into it as much as I possibly could have done.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah.
I think by the time I was going through my infertility grief, I had successfully rewired my brain to equate love with achievement. And if I succeeded in doing something, then that meant that I was loved. And so I worked very hard at achieving, and I kind of kept the operation together. I didn't tell anyone but my then husband. He was the only one that really went through my infertility experiences because he had to. And then when I was 38, I went and did the math on that. And in year 5 of the whole infertility thing, my husband was laid off. My department that I loved managing was eliminated. My dad committed suicide, and my uncle died shortly thereafter, a beloved uncle. And that got my attention, needless to say, being knocked off center and thinking I could still be Superwoman as I went through all of that. And I held on for as long as I could. And basically, I was kind of a mess and I didn't know how to let people in. And thank goodness, little by little, I found some good therapists. I was active in a Resolve group, and the hard part about that was people were successful in the Resolve group, and then that just kind of laid on another level of grief. But to walk around with all of that and being so incredibly functional from an achievement standpoint, I think set me up for some challenges later on as I was trying to reconstruct who is this person actually and how do I operate in the world. And so I think I kind of had to take everything and knock it all back down. So I would say during that time period, I did not feel lovable. Nobody in my family understood what I was going through. By then, all of my sisters had children. Um, and so I just felt disconnected, and I think I was pretty shut down and depressed. I was. And so, and the lining of that's silver is that it gave me the impetus. I didn't have a choice. I knew I had to go take care of the grieving process because it wasn't working to just shove it to the side.
Yeah, that makes sense. That was a lot to carry, an awful lot in a short period of time, it sounds.
I think when I think about what's already been said, I'm remembering that there were many times when I felt unlovable outside of grieving, not becoming a mum. So I had so many messages, and I always reflect back on dating my 20s, which I absolutely hated. A lot because there was a lot of rejection, and I always felt like I was, and I knew it came down to because I didn't know who I was that in every relationship I was in, and that could probably stem more than just dating, is that I was always trying to be a different person. I was always trying to be who I thought they said I should be, or who I imagined they thought I should be, and therefore would be rejected when I'm trying, and they still didn't like me. So what I found, and subsequently having two terminations in my 20s, what I found then, I was carrying all of that shame
Mhm.
into everything, moving from that, which was, so the narrative I was creating in my head is, I'm not lovable. No one would like me if they knew what I did. And if somebody did pay me a compliment, my inner um bitch was saying, if they only knew what you've done, they would not like who you are. So and that also impacted on how I grieved the loss of motherhood. Is I didn't feel like I deserved that because of the shame I was carrying from my past. So everything was my fault. And the way
Mhm.
I dated, the way who I became, and all of that was all contributed to this person who's sitting now in front of the mirror, who's not going to become a mum. That meant I was just a really crap shit person and I didn't deserve any of this. So I didn't see how I could, in a way, be loved. I never thought of it in that way at the time, but when I'm reflecting on what's been said, um, now, I don't think I felt I could be loved. What the grieving process did give me, and when I did, because I did the Plan B mentorship program with Jodie, what I realized is I didn't know how to love myself. And that was the crux of it for me, because at the end of the day, people are not going to like things about us. People are always going to reject us. And I can, stand here now with so much love for myself that I'm starting to go, okay, if you don't like it, you don't like it. It's still hard. But I can say that more confidently now than I could have in the past. And, so the crux of it for me is I didn't know how to love myself. So as much as I had early examples of love, I also saw how it changed, because things did fluctuate depending on what I was doing. So if I did something that somebody deemed not great, you could see how they would treat you for it, or how they would look at you, how they'll see you. And if it was what I was expected to do, and I got all the hugs and kisses and the praise. So I always knew that, depending on what you do, if you're the good girl, you're going to get all of this love. And if you're the bad girl, you're going to be, you're down there rejected. No one wants to see you. So I found it very hard to kind of think about this and marry it up. So for me, it was hard to grieve, because actually the reason why I'm in this place was because I was the bad girl. I don't consider that anymore, but that's kind of what was playing out for me at the time. So therefore, I didn't deserve anything more. I didn't deserve understanding. I didn't deserve love. I didn't deserve care. I didn't deserve anything, because, I felt really, really crap about myself.
Wow, that's pretty harsh.
Mm.
Glad you got through
Me too. Good therapist as cases.
it. Rob. Rob?
Hi, yeah. When you first asked the question, I went back to a time in my life in my late 30s. In a previous relationship in my sort of mid 30s, my then partner had said, I want to have children with you. I want to have your babies. But then we split up. And um, again, that deep sense of loss around the relationship, but also the opportunity to become what I'd been thought was the ideal thing, and fitting in with my peer group, who were all seemingly having babies. And at that time, one of my colleagues became a dad, and we had been really good friends for a long time. We used to have a lot of social time in work together, and I couldn't face him. I was so jealous I couldn't be in the same room with him.
Oh,
And after a few months, he, we had a chat, and he said, "What's up?" Because things aren't like they were. And I said, "Well, you've got the life I should have."
oh,
And that's what I felt. Moving on a few years, I met my wife, and we were going out, and I just moved house. I was doing some decorating, wallpapering. I'm terrible at wallpapering. Things to do when you're dead, wallpapering and ironing, in my view. And again, a fellow at work had become a dad and was feeling, yeah. And she's a few years older than me. And I said, I'm feeling really broody. I want to be a dad. And she said, well, it's not going to be with me because I was broody, but now the risks are too high. She's a medical professional, and I can't take that risk. And we had a few conversations around this. I've condensed it into one, but we did a discussion around this. And what I'm coming to is the view of the self that Yvonne and Sarah and Kate and is so influential. And my view of myself that time was, who else would want me? Like, I'm really out of my league with the person I'm with, and I love her dearly. But, there's that balancing up of, I want to be a dad, but also I want to be loved and I want to be in a loving relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, that sounds really hard. Well, my experience, I ended up becoming very self-reliant, which some people here talked about. That was also a part of their journey as well. I knew when I was 12 I was going to raise myself. And when I got married, my ex-husband had children, and so he was actually had custody. And so I was finishing up my MBA, and we had very little debt, and I was looking forward to a great future. And right after we got married, one of the children went to live with his mother, and she started taking us to court. And in a year and a half, we had 6 figures of legal bills. And that started us on a journey of trying to find ways to pay that off. A lot of moving, buying houses, fixing them up, selling them, changing jobs. And since we got married in our 30s, by the time we could consider having a child of our own, it was really too late. And I found that after all that, I was out on a limb all by myself because my husband at the time really wouldn't plan anything further with me. We couldn't do any planning together. I don't know all the reasons behind that, but nonetheless, that basically was, if I look back, it was the beginning of the end of our marriage. I was left really dazed. I mean, I feel like my life, I've been a little bit shocked and dazed, most of it. But I did end up going to art school, which was kind of nice. I mean, it was a breather from a lot of things and a way for me just to do something that I like. But nonetheless, as time went on, I started trying to work online and eventually, came to where I am today. But I feel like I've never really, all of the moving and all of that, I never really put down roots anywhere because that really wasn't possible. I don't really have a sense of place. It cost me tremendously, not just in terms of family, but also in terms of having a sense of place. I admire people who live in one place for a substantial portion of their lives and get that sense of home that comes from place is just as important as the sense of home that comes from family. And that's not something that I really have. So I've never really been able to be settled. In my marriage, my family got to know my stepchildren. So that was, they saw me as a stepmother. So that may have neutralized some sort of conversation about what's wrong with you. You don't have children. But so it's never really been, a big source of drama. I still think I'm probably a mystery to them, but that's okay. I mean, they saw me as a step parent, and I think that was okay, sort of in the family model. And but the hardest thing for me, I think, has been not to have any sort of sense of place and not being able to put down any roots. And to me, being a parent and that's part of it, really, your connection with your roots, the connection with the roots that you've been offered, and then the furthering of the roots down the road. That's, to me, that's what parenting, that's part of what it's all about. So I've always been an optimist, and I've always been an optimist about our possibilities as people to create a world that's really worth living in. But I must admit, I've been surprised at all the resistance that I have bumped into. And anyway, it's been interesting. I find at this point in my life, I am, starting to look more at, for the remaining third of my life, what am I going to be doing? And it needs to matter. So not interested in any more games or anything else. So anyway, we're going to come to today now and talk about today. So what has changed in your attitudes, expectations, priorities in love relationships, including, but not necessarily, romantic ones? So does anyone want to share where they're at now and their priorities today?
Well, I would say mine is definitely putting myself first. I have, I mean, I've done a lot of work. It's interesting. I've said this recently to people. It's like, I've done a lot of work on finding my voice, because one of the
Oh,
things throughout my whole life is that I was always silenced. And I realized, again, the gift of going through the grief work was the recognition that I didn't know my voice and I didn't have one. So for me, it was finding my voice. And I've been, since start of that part of my journey, I have been finding my voice through therapy, through my activism, through public speaking, through
mm,
all of this, through going inward through therapy. And I have realized through that as well, and now coming to accept the fact that not everyone wants to hear what I have to say or like. And my acceptance in that is okay, because that is about them and not about me. If I'm going to claim being a truth teller, which I am starting to claim, that means that there are people who are not going to like it. But to be able to be true to myself, I have to be able to do that. And unless people are going to refund me for all the work I've done on myself, I'm no longer going to keep being quiet. So
oh,
I will continue to speak my truth.
mhm,
Um, because I realized also that's what I need to do, because of all this, the way I've been suppressed, the way I've been put down, all the shame, all the blame, all the stuff that I've put on myself, that I've allowed people to project onto me. I can't carry that anymore. So for me to feel free, for me to feel um, to be proud of who I am, to stand strong in who I am, and to remain grounded means that I need to be able to do that in the knowledge and acceptance that not everybody will like what they have to hear or who I am. Um, and I think it's such a very freeing place to be.
mhm,
I have bound myself up so long, and I have worried, and I have cared, and it's not that I don't care, it's just that it's a different way of being for me. So it really is about that, for me, that self-care, in being able to look after myself, and know that actually I have something to say, I have feelings, I have thoughts, and no longer being too afraid. I'm going to say too afraid, because there still is a fear to truly walk in the person who I've become.
okay. Before we go on, we have one question I think that's worth, if this is applies to you, perhaps you can talk about it. The question is, could we kindly talk about how childlessness has affected love on a sexual level? This person says her childlessness has made it so hard to come to terms with that, although she has a loving husband. They've had no sex life for over 10 years, and they've just learned to live that way. And if this is something that's relevant to you, if you could talk about it, that would be great also. Yeah.
I can touch on that one for sure. Yvonne, were you done?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Actually, I think it was Yvonne also that talked about being a shapeshifter. And in order for me to kind of get to where I am now, which is in a very stable, happy, good place, I had to let that go, and I had to go inside to get out. And with respect to, well, I'll circle back to the sex part of it, but during COVID, I was alone. And a few years before that, my 34-year-old marriage had ended. And COVID was really good for me because I had time with myself and I had to look at myself and I had time to figure out how to cope. And I had time to say, who is this actual real person? During the course of the divorce, all of a sudden I found a backbone. And instead of shape shifting, I became who I was. And that served me very well. And it was scary as possibly could be. And then when I decided I probably better start dating if I wanted to have a partnership, which I really wanted to have a really healthy relationship, I started doing the same thing. I went back and got in touch with that little girl. And then I thought about who I was at the beginning of my marriage. And I really liked who I was at the beginning of my marriage. I didn't like who I was at the end of my marriage. And I do. And actually, my ex and I had kind of a wrap up meeting when everything was done. And we both went back to the exact same time, which was the beginning of our end, which related directly to infertility and the impact of infertility and all of that on our sex life. It basically was gone. It was gone, gone, gone. And so when I decided to go out into the dating world with my new self, that I would have dates and dance parties with myself during COVID, and that was all really nice. The commitment that I made was I'm not gonna go back to trying to morph around to the way people are. And I started out feeling very insecure. Um, and I felt out of touch with my own body and I didn't know who I was as a sexual person. All I had this little inkling, and I went and got myself a nice new vibrator during COVID, got my little bag and drove up, gave it to me. It was just like this whole time of discovery. And then dating was really weird because I think it was more about me learning what worked for me than I mean, it was fine. The people were almost like a backdrop to who is this person now, and also to be able to discern what the other person was actually like rather than how I could adjust to fit around them.
Mhm.
The physical aspect of that, sexuality aspect of that, was a really cool way to learn what I actually wanted and what I actually liked and how I actually felt in a in a responsive way that I would say I did right as I was ready to just throw the whole thing away. I did meet someone, and we've been together for the last 4.5 years. And being being whole, being who I am, being willing to go at risk by showing up complete and articulating my needs and my interests, and particularly in the physical world, because it's so damn hard, um, that it created a way for me to be whole in relationship that I had never experienced before. And so I have a commitment now to speak up. I have a commitment to ask for what I want. I have a commitment to offer what I can. And my partner, he has children, and there are times when there's grown children and there's grandchildren with special needs, and to navigate through that in the most healthy relationship that I can imagine having, and it's what I wanted, is now like another level of impetus to say, okay, how do I fit in this world? Because all of the old tapes are still back there going, oh yeah, you need to step aside, you need to support. And then when he's doing that, it's like, okay, wait, there also is a limit to how much I can do and how I, and I had to go inside in order to be able to get out into the world. So it's continuous learning, kind of a blast as a journey.
That's great. Good for
There,
you.
my change story is almost the polar opposite of Kate's. So it's possibly a good point to come. And I love what you've just said, Kate, and thank you for your honesty and being upfront with all that. After my marriage broke down and I'd done my childless grieving, I thought I still wanted a relationship. I tried internet dating. Whenever I went out, I'd be looking and thinking, oh, is there anybody prospective, anybody here? And I don't remember if it was a sudden realization or if it came gradually, but I just suddenly realized that I really wasn't interested anymore. I really didn't. I suddenly realized I didn't need another person to be part of my life in that way, in a romantic way or in any sexual way. And that in fact, it ended then that feeling of constant rejection and not being good enough and not being lovable in that sense, because I just realized, and I wish I could think back now and realize and remember how I realized it, but I just know I did, that I'm on my own and that's fine. And I think perhaps part of that was that I got rid of a lot of anger and bitterness, because those feelings were there. I'm naturally a pretty happy person. I'm a very secure person, but it's almost impossible to go through what we've been through without having some anger and bitterness there. But there came to me a realization that I feel so strongly now that everything that happened to me has made me the person I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really love the person I am now. And I love the life I have now. So all the things that happened to me, I don't know whether they meant to happen. I'm not sure if I believe that, but they did happen. And I went through it all and I got through it. And my life now is really, really good. And I have huge amounts of love in my life. None of it is romantic love. I had that. I'm glad I experienced that, because there was lots of good times in my marriage before it all went wrong. So I did experience that love, and I'm glad I did. But I don't feel I ever need that again. And a while ago, I remember making a list. It must have been for some journal or task I was doing, a list of all the sources of love in my life. And I realize now that love is so much more than one other person.
Mm-hmm.
So I can rattle off some of the things now. I love my cats. I love my home. I love the village where I live. I love my family. I love my niece and my nephew. I love my garden. I love learning. I love my work. I could go on, and I'll shut up because it'll be 8:30 and we won't know where we are. But what I've realized and what's changed for me is love is such a broad church. And I have love to give, and I give love to all those things I've just mentioned, and I get love back from all of those. But it all comes back to I love myself, and that's at the crux of everything.
Just
Sounds
want
like a very rich life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I just want to add
absolutely.
something on top of that, because I've experienced a lot of what Sarah's talking about as well.
Mm.
And one of the things, because also I'm recognizing from the person who asked the question, is they're talking about being in a marriage. And I know when I was in my marriage, when I realized I wasn't going to have children, I lost the complete desire to have sex because there was no point. And I then can, and I am divorced now, and 5 years on, I'm in a different place. But I can also recognize how that kind of can keep continuing, and therefore, before you know it, 10 years have gone, and you're still here feeling like, actually, we haven't had sex for ages, and it's all gone. For me, since then, I was fortunate to experience a really loving relationship with my late fiance. Um, you know, going through his loss, and where I am now, is I've realized, similar to what Kate said, is like I've also realized that I have no desire for sex. It's just very different for me now, and it's not, then I'm tracking it back to understand kind of what's gone on, why have I lost this desire? Because now I'm realizing I want to desire that. I don't need it in the way that there's a traditional stereotypical patriarchal way that we have to be in relationships. So I'm really questioning, what does relationship mean for me? What does sex mean for me? And I'm doing that with my therapist. Why is this? Why is this? Because I feel like, in order to be in this desiring, healthy place, I need to understand what's going on for me and my whys, so that then if I then do decide that this is where I want to be, it's going to be a much more enjoyable experience for me than it has been in the past.
Cool. Steph or Rob?
I think it's down to the individual. It's a really hard one to judge as well, because for some people, sex is the relationship almost, and perhaps that's not quite such a healthy relationship. Whereas if a relationship can be based on the sort of the love as in just hugs or touches or things like that, that can be enriching or more meaningful and more deeper, a deeper love than actual sex itself. Do you know what I mean? So everybody's different with what they need and what they want. But it's finding that contentment and knowing that you, as long as you're happy with what you've got, that's what's important. And it's not to compare ourselves to other people, because some people tell you the truth and a lot of people will lie, or other people will joke about it. And it's literally just finding happiness in what you've got. If it doesn't make you happy, then yes, sit back, reflect, and think, do you need more from the relationship? And if you can't get it, do you need to leave it? But it's not comparing yourself and deciding if you are happy or not, which is a hard thing to judge, or whether you've got used to something or whether you want it to change. It's all about open conversations with your partner and then deciding what you need.
Yeah, I think
what they need. Yeah,
key there, Steph, is talking, because that's the thing I forgot about as well, is it's talking, because we don't talk about sex.
No.
You know, and when people don't talk about it I certainly didn't talk about it in any of my relationships. It's like, this is where I am at now. It's like, I want to be able to talk about this stuff. You know, do I want to be there? Does it need to change? And intimacy, like what Steph was talking about, it comes in so many different ways, because it can just be from touch. You know, so I think it's being able to, and similar to what Sarah said, know yourself, explore yourself. Kate was saying this as well, and talking about it. Because I think the absence of that, we're always going to be stuck and lost.
Yeah.
Putting a couple of resources in the chat too, because there's places to go and you're like, whoa, hey.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much. Rob.
Excellent. Yeah, I think all the previous speakers have covered it so well, and I think there's something around time as well, and expectation, and what are your expectations, but very much talking and listening. I think learning to listen is such a skill, and sometimes in relationships that sort of disappears. You're on the same road, but you're in different lanes. Might be a way to describe it. And absolutely, what Kate's done is maybe talk, but then go and see someone and say, this part of our relationship we need to discuss, and having somebody independent there may just give you a different perspective, shines a different light, and gives different narratives and actually different words. As somebody quite often struggles to express myself, finding some words that actually that's the word I need can help a lot.
Cool. Cool. Well, in my marriage, which is over now, I wouldn't say that not having children stopped our sex life. It did stop when he had a stroke. So that did change things, and health will do that. As far as my priorities now, I'm very focused on what I would call the actual interaction in relationships. I'm not really interested in all the games and all the narratives and all of that kind of thing. I've been thinking a lot about tenderness, and tenderness as a place to live from, because as I've been exploring tenderness, it's very grounded, it's very present. It makes space for you and it makes space for other people. And it also helps you notice when the energies around you aren't in that place. And I'm finding that that needs to be a place where I need to focus my attention. I want to spend more time developing my skills around using tenderness in my relationships, because I think that there's just so many ways in which people relate based on, social position and all the competition and all this kind of baggage that just is unhelpful. And as I get older, I just don't want to spend my time on all of that stuff. And I want to be where I can do and work with people and be with them in a more nourishing way and a more grounded and down to earth way. I'm not interested in ridiculous expectations and all of that kind of stuff. So it kind of sort of clears the air to me. And that air clearing leaves space for something else. I can't say that I'm looking for a relationship. I think it's lovely if you can have that. I do enjoy being alone with my cat, and I'm perfectly happy that way for the rest of my life, as long as I can continue to contribute in a way that makes sense for me and I think is worthwhile. And to me, that's enough. But I find that as I get older, I'm less and less interested in all of the stuff that kind of consumes our time that really isn't nourishing or helpful to ourselves and to others. There's way too much judgment and rejection, right, Yvonne?
Absolutely.
Okay, I guess we're pretty much out of time. Let me see. I want to thank everyone who's been here today, our panelists, for all of their wisdom, for being so honest for our readers so that they have a way to make sense of their experience. And so I hope everyone who's been listening has found the discussion to be illuminating and helpful. If you visit the World Childless Week website, you will learn more about our panelists and their projects. And there is a recording that will be available on YouTube along with links. So I hope you tell your friends about it and share it with them. And as you know, it's the beginning of World Childless Week. And there are many fabulous webinars and heartfelt stories about the experience of childlessness. So I hope you explore it all during this special week for childless people. Steph?
Okay, on the spot there.
Yeah.
I just wanted to reflect back again before we go on what people have been saying and what Yvonne has said as well. And that, like, for me, as I said at the beginning, I said that I didn't have a father figure. And he sort of was like, I knew he didn't love me. And this is when, younger than 10. And I felt rejected by him. But then he was out of my life and I got more confident when I went to college and I started to perhaps love myself. But then in my 20s, I was in an abusive relationship and he used love to manipulate me. So I was in love with him, but I wasn't a real love. Do you know what I mean? And then I came out of it and find myself again. And then I'm in the relationship I'm in now, but then we hit childlessness and you lose yourself again. But slowly, like our finding our voice, as Yvonne said, it comes along with healing from the grief. When we find that inner love and start reflecting and healing ourselves and realizing we're worth it, that self-care is, a priority above anything else, because if we don't look after ourselves, we're not here for anything else in the world or for any other person. That's when we start to see our worth and our value and our self-love, and it grows from that. And that's why I think we can then find that confidence, as you said again, Yvonne. If somebody doesn't like us, that's their problem, it's not ours. So yeah, it's focusing on that growth within ourselves that does slowly come in, and quite often we don't see it. We had a webinar before, Maria, when we said about opening the door, and we're gradually slowly opening that door and finding that love on the other side. And I think that's what we need to absorb more of. And then, yeah, because we're worthy of love, we're worthy of everything. But yeah, absolutely. Love ourselves first and go from there.
Wonderful. Great. Well, it's been wonderful talking with all of you. And thank you so much for being so honest and providing so much optimism for our listeners. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you.